policies and procedures or personnel or government-private partnerships, everyone talked about speed and how it's important to move quickly in the world of security. The security team at Uber has really focused on velocity and speed in order to accomplish the goals of our security programs. And I'm going to focus on that aspect of security today, briefly. So in general, security is known for slowing things down, having really long compliance checklists, access control systems, all these things that introduce delays into business processes and slow down product innovation. We're trying to change all that. One real good example that was brought up earlier, ransomware attacks, which have happened in the last couple years. They reminded organizations what happens if you don't patch quickly. And supposedly, patching is not that difficult. It's something that only takes a little bit of time on one system. But when you have hundreds or thousands of systems to patch, it can become very difficult. And many organizations are hesitant to make changes at the pace that are required to stay ahead of threats like WannaCry or others like that. In many cases, organizations are unable to make changes to systems that they don't understand very well, or legacy systems, because there's a very real risk that they will break things and no one will know how to fix them. However, in order to do security well, like everyone mentioned earlier today, you need to go fast. Security needs to be able to update things quickly. And how do you get there? So I'm going to provide a couple concrete suggestions, concrete tactics that we've used at Uber, as well as a couple examples of situations where we needed to go fast, and we did. Most importantly, the culture of your company has to be one where everyone is on board with the pace of change that's required in order to stay ahead of security threats. So how do you create that culture in your company? The primary theme of all that is the DevOps approach, where each of these tactics works in concert as a strategy to get you where you need to be in terms of change velocity. So when you want to make 3 changes a year to your business systems, you don't need a lot of automation. You don't need a lot of you don't need the ability to phase your rollouts. You can just make those changes 3 times a year. When you want to make changes several hundred times a day, you need to maximize the amount of automation that's happening with each individual change. Each individual change needs to be smaller. And then you also have to have the capability and the cultural okay to roll back changes quickly when they fail. So you make changes to small portions of your infrastructure at a time. You see how they work, and then if they don't work or if there's issues with them, you quickly roll them back. I've worked in multiple organizations prior to Uber where that ability to roll back, like the company had the ability, but they didn't have the cultural okay to do it. It was considered bad to roll anything back, but you need to consider that as a success in your software engineering pipeline when you rolled something to production and then quickly rolled it back because there was a problem with it. Additionally, you can't make these organizational changes simply within the security organization on its own. You need all sorts of buy-in from across your business. And the approach that we took at Uber was to go directly to the board of directors with our understanding of the severity of the ransomware threat in particular. And that brought us the support that we needed in order to push very rapid change across all the different environments that we have. Another component of those changes that was required was in order to make those changes, the security team needed a certain amount of engineering resources. And as we list here, the really serious security teams have dedicated engineering resources to make the changes that are needed. So I'm going to go through a couple specific examples of security situations that we encountered where we needed to move really quickly. So the first one is fraud that happens with GPS spoofing. So GPS spoofing is when you have a helper app on your phone that tells your phone that your GPS location is different than your real location. So drivers would use this to create fake trips. They also use it to create trips that are longer than the actual trip in order to defraud Uber and to defraud Uber's users. So we needed to make lots of different changes in order to adapt very quickly to this threat when it came up. It was our biggest threat when we were operating in China. However, it's still a threat today in lots of different markets around the world. So we would analyze real-time traffic versus the speed that was being reported by the devices. We would look at the GPS data, compare the GPS data of a normal trip versus the GPS data of the fraudulent trips. We would also look for consistency between the accelerometer data and the GPS data. So we would very quickly adapt our systems to detect this type of fraud and then prevent it going forward. One more time, there we go. As a second example, Uber uses SSH extensively. It's a remote administration tool, I guess you could call it. It's a type of encryption that we use to secure the connections that our administrators and our employees are using to access systems. It has some issues around key management, key expiration, and in the process of us using it, we developed our own certificate authority. It's a pretty cool contribution to the world of encryption. And then we open sourced a module for it, the PAM module that's listed at the bottom there. And in this example, just hours after we open sourced this, we received on our bug bounty program a notification that there was a security vulnerability in the module, which we then corrected within hours. So that's a really good example of us having to adapt to a security need and then very, very quickly, within hours, addressing it, publishing it, and fixing it permanently. Okay, I'm trying to go super fast here, so hopefully I'm not blazing through it too quickly, but just a couple final thoughts. Businesses these days need to move super, super quickly to avoid being disrupted. Uber is a really good example of a company that moves very, very quickly. The security strategies need to move very quickly as well. And the threats are evolving very, very quickly. My team in particular deals with all sorts of different threats from competitors, from hackers, and from denial of service. All those types of things, all those types of incidents affect Uber on a regular basis. And we have strived over the last several years to keep pace with our security program, and we've done so pretty successfully. So thanks very much.
Recibe reconocimiento por parte de la División Científica el señor Kevin Maher.